My husband yelled on my birthday, "My mother is here, she doesn't want to see your son," while he was pushing my crying boy into the room, so I made them know their place. Today I turned 40, an age that once seemed distant and frightening, now felt like a new step, a chance to start fresh. I smiled, trying to chase away the timid shadows of doubt that flickered in my soul from time to time. On the table, covered with a snow-white tablecloth, were my favorite dishes: Olivier salad made from my mom's recipe, roasted chicken with a golden crust, and, of course, a large cake decorated with cream roses. The aroma of fresh baking and flowers filled the apartment, creating an atmosphere of warmth and celebration. Daniel, my son, was bustling around nearby, intently whispering something to himself. He was only 7, but he took this event very seriously. I knew he was preparing a surprise for me. For several days, he had been enthusiastically making something out of colored paper and cardboard, and when I tried to peek, he would wrinkle his nose funnily and hide his creation behind his back. My heart filled with tenderness when I looked at him. Daniel was the meaning of my life, my ray of light in dark times. I remembered how many years ago, after my divorce from his father, I thought my life was over. I was alone with a small child in my arms, without a job and without any confidence in the future. But Daniel, his cheerful laughter and boundless love, helped me to endure. For his sake, I worked 2 jobs, studied in the evenings, and tried to create a happy childhood for him. And now, looking at his shining eyes, I understood that it was all worth it. "Mom, are the guests coming soon?" Daniel asked, tearing himself away from his activity. "Soon, sweetheart, soon," I replied, gently stroking his hair. "Are you ready for your performance?" Daniel blushed deeply and lowered his eyes. I am still a little nervous," he mumbled. "Do not worry, everything will be fine," I reassured him. "I know you are the most talented." I hugged him tightly and felt his little body relax in my arms. Soon, the guests began to arrive. First came my friends from work, cheerful and noisy. They brought bouquets of flowers and a box of chocolates. Then came the neighbors with whom I maintained warm relations. Everyone congratulated me, wished me happiness and health. I felt surrounded by love and care. My mom, Laura, arrived a little earlier to help with dinner. She silently watched me, her eyes glowing with warmth and pride. Laura knew how much I had been through and how hard I had worked for this happiness. She saw how I was blossoming, how my eyes were starting to shine again. "You are very beautiful today, my dear," Laura said, hugging me. "Happy?" "Thanks, Mom," I replied, pressing against her. "I really feel good." My husband, Ian, was acting strangely today. He kept looking at his phone, stepping out into the hallway to talk to someone. I noticed his nervousness, but tried not to pay attention. I hoped it was just pre-holiday excitement, because usually he was so attentive and caring. At least he tried to be. I met Ian 3 years ago. He seemed like a reliable and serious man. He courted me beautifully, gave me flowers, and took me to restaurants. He quickly found common ground with Daniel, and I believed that I had finally found my love. I married him, hoping to create a strong and happy family. But over time, I began to notice that Ian listened more and more to his mother, Susan. She was a domineering and controlling woman who believed she knew best how to live. She constantly interfered in our lives, criticized me, and tried to control Ian. It was very difficult for me to deal with her. It was especially hard when it came to Daniel. Susan did not hide her dislike for the boy, considering him a burden and reminding me of my past. Ian, instead of defending his wife and son, always took his mother's side. He was afraid of her anger and disapproval. He was weak and dependent on her. I tried to talk to him many times to explain how difficult it was for me, but he always brushed it off with excuses and promises that he never kept. Sometimes it seemed to me that I was living not with my husband, but with his mother. I felt lonely and unhappy, but for Daniel's sake, I tried to endure, hoping that things would change over time. I believed that Ian would be able to break free from his mother's influence and become a real man. Now, looking at his tense face, I understood that my hopes were probably in vain. But I tried not to think about it today. Today was my day, and I wanted to enjoy it to the fullest. The guests were taking their seats at the table, toasts and congratulations were being made. I felt happy and at peace. Daniel sat next to me, holding my hand tightly. I felt his warmth and support. "Mom, can I recite my poem now?" he whispered in my ear. "Of course, sweetheart," I replied, smiling. "Just wait a little, when everyone has settled down." The doorbell cut through the festive atmosphere like a cracked pane of glass. Ian, who had been nervously glancing at his phone until that moment, jumped up so sharply that he knocked over his glass. Red wine spilled onto the snow-white tablecloth, spreading like a sinister stain. "I will get it," he blurted out, avoiding my gaze. His face, already tense, was now contorted with a grimace of anxiety. I felt a chill growing inside me. I knew who was at the door. Susan, my mother-in-law, whose presence always poisoned our lives. I managed to catch Daniel's eye. Fear mixed with resignation flickered in the boy's eyes. He already knew what was about to happen. How many times had he witnessed scenes where his grandmother's arrival turned their home into a battlefield? Ian almost ran into the hallway. I, obeying some inner impulse, followed him. I had to be with Daniel. The sound of the opening door, the muffled voices in the hallway, all of it seemed syrupy and unreal. And then there was a scream, so loud, so furious that the walls trembled. "My mother is already here," Ian yelled. "She does not want to see your son." I froze. My husband's words, like a slap in the face, burned me. I saw Daniel, who was standing next to me, flinch and turn pale. The boy, like a small animal cornered, instinctively pressed against me. Ian, as if possessed, burst out of the hallway. His eyes were flashing with lightning. He grabbed Daniel's arm, roughly pushing him away from me. "Go to your room," he shouted. "Do not you dare show your face to her." Daniel tried to break free, but Ian held him in a death grip. Tears streamed down the boy's cheeks. He looked at me with pleading eyes, seeking protection. "Ian, what are you doing?" I finally managed to breathe, trying to recover from the shock. "Let him go." But Ian seemed not to hear me. He continued to drag Daniel towards the nursery. "You have to understand," he hissed, "that my mother is a special person. She should not see this bastard." The last words sounded like a whip crack. I felt everything inside me boil with rage. Bastard? He was talking about my son, the boy I love more than anything in the world. Ian pushed Daniel into the room and slammed the door in his face. The lock clicked, cutting the boy off from the rest of the world. A deathly silence fell in the living room. The guests, as if paralyzed, sat at the table. Their faces were frozen in expressions of horror and bewilderment. No one dared to say a word. I stood in the middle of the room as if turned to stone. I could not believe what had happened. Was all of this really happening? Was Ian capable of such cruelty? I looked at the faces of my friends. In their eyes, I saw sympathy, but also a kind of detached curiosity, as if they were watching a drama unfold in a theater. I felt disgusted. Disgusted with Ian, with his mother, with these people who were now sitting and looking at me like an exhibit in a museum. I wanted to scream, to break something, to let out all the pain and rage that were now overwhelming me. But instead, I just stood there and said nothing. Suddenly, someone stood up from the table. I looked up and saw my mother. Laura. My mother had always been quiet and unobtrusive. She had always tried to avoid conflicts and to please others in every way. I was used to seeing her as submissive and yielding. But now a different Laura stood before me. Her eyes burned with anger, and her voice had a steely hardness. My mother opened the door. On the threshold stood Susan. Her face expressed extreme displeasure. "What is going on here?" she asked disgruntledly. "Why did my son take so long to open the door?" Laura looked her straight in the eye. There was no fear or obsequiousness in her eyes, only contempt. "Ian, still stunned by his own shouting and his son's tears, looked at his mother-in-law with unconcealed bewilderment. He had expected hysterics from me, maybe even reproaches and tears, but not action from the quiet Laura. "Susan," she began, "I understand that the presence of my grandson in this house causes you discomfort. But this is my daughter's house, and Daniel is her son. If you do not like something here, if you think he is not worthy to be near your son," she paused for a moment, "then maybe you should leave." Susan was taken aback. She was used to people giving in to her, to being feared. She was used to everyone dancing to her tune, especially Ian. She had not expected such a rebuff from this quiet, inconspicuous woman. "How dare you?" she hissed, trying to maintain a semblance of dignity. "Do you even know who you are talking to?" "I am Ian's mother." "I am Maria's mother," Laura replied calmly. "And I will not allow my daughter and my grandson to be humiliated in their own home. Ian is old enough to make his own decisions. And if he does not, then maybe it is too early for him to get married and start a family." Ian stood as if struck by lightning. He could not believe his ears. His mother-in-law, always so gentle and yielding, was now speaking to his mother in a way he would never have dared. He wanted to intervene, to defend his mother, but the words stuck in his throat. He knew that if he supported his mother now, he would lose me for good. I looked at my husband. I saw his confusion, his fear of his mother, his inability to make a decision. And at that moment, I realized that all these years I had been living with a stranger, with a man who would never put me and my son first. I looked at my mother. In my mother's eyes, I saw support, love, and pride. And then I made up my mind. I took a step forward, stood next to my mother, and looked straight into Ian's eyes. My gaze was firm, calm, without tears or hysterics. "Ian," I said quietly, but so that everyone could hear, "I cannot do this anymore. I am tired of the constant pressure, of your inability to protect us, of your eternal dependence on your mother. You have made your choice. You chose her." I paused to gather my courage. "You have lost me." Susan, hearing these words, tried to object, but my mother interrupted her. "Please leave," she said, handing her Ian's jacket. "You are not welcome here." Ian remained standing in the doorway, as if glued to the floor. He looked at me, trying to understand what had happened. He saw a determination in my eyes that he had never noticed before. He knew that he had really lost me. I turned to the guests. The room was silent. Everyone was waiting for what I would say. I took a deep breath and smiled. "I am sorry," I said, "for this little incident. Let's continue our celebration." Susan, after giving the room one last contemptuous look full of unspoken reproaches, turned and left. Ian stood as if paralyzed. His eyes showed defeat mixed with a belated realization of what he had done. He looked from his mother's retreating back to me, in whose eyes there was no longer any fear or pleading, only calm determination. He knew he had crossed a line and there was no turning back. All these years he had balanced between two women, trying to please both, and in the end, he had lost the one who was truly dear to him. But the realization came too late. Ian slowly stepped aside, letting me pass. He did not say a word, as if he had lost the power of speech. His silence conveyed an admission of defeat, a capitulation in the face of the strength he had so long ignored in his wife. He knew that any argument, any excuse now would sound pathetic and inappropriate. He saw the world he had tried so hard to preserve crumbling, a world built on compromises and concessions, in which there was no place for my happiness and my son's. I took a deep breath, as if gathering strength before an important step. I looked at the door behind which Susan had disappeared, then looked at Ian. His eyes were full of remorse, but that no longer mattered. Too much had been said, too much had been done. The wound had been inflicted, and it would not heal. "Daniel," I called softly, and my voice was full of tenderness and love, contrasting with the icy calm I had been showing for the last few minutes. The bedroom door slowly creaked open, and Daniel appeared on the threshold. His eyes were red from tears, but the fear that had been visible before was gone. He looked at his mom with hope and anxiety, as if afraid to believe that the worst was over. I stepped towards my son and hugged him tightly. I felt his little heart beating, his body trembling. I held him close, as if trying to protect him from all the evil and injustice of this world. The guests watched the scene with bated breath. Their eyes showed sympathy and admiration for me, who in this difficult moment had found the strength to protect her child and defend her right to happiness. I pulled away from Daniel and looked him in the eyes. "It is okay, my sweet," I whispered, wiping the tears from his cheeks. "It is over. No one will hurt you anymore." Daniel looked at his mom with gratitude and love. He felt that everything had really changed, that he was no longer alone, that he had a mom who would always protect him. I took Daniel's hand and led him into the living room. The guests greeted them with applause, expressing their support and admiration. Daniel was a little embarrassed, but he felt more confident when he saw the smiles on the faces of his friends and relatives. "Daniel wanted to tell us something," I said, looking at my son with tenderness. "He learned a poem for me." Daniel blushed but nodded. He had been preparing for this moment for a long time, and now that it was all over, he wanted to please his mom with his surprise. He stood in the center of the room, a little shy, but, gathering his courage, he began to recite, "The sun shines brightly in the sky, the birds sing merrily. Mom is the best in the world, I love her very much." He recited the poem with expression, putting all his love and gratitude into every word. His voice trembled slightly, but it was filled with sincerity and warmth. When he finished, the guests burst into loud applause. I went to my son and hugged him, kissing him on the cheek. "You are so clever, my sweet," I whispered. "This is the best gift in the world." At that moment, the atmosphere in the room changed. The tension that had been hanging in the air for the last few hours dissipated like fog. Warmth and coziness returned to the room. But it was a different kind of coziness. A coziness of freedom and hope. I felt like the mistress of my own life. I was no longer afraid, no longer doubted, no longer compromised. I knew I had made the right choice and that a new, happy life awaited me. The evening continued. The guests congratulated me, wished me happiness and luck. I smiled, accepted the congratulations, and felt truly happy. My mother, Laura, came up to me and hugged me. "I am proud of you, my dear," she said. "You did the right thing. You deserve to be happy." I hugged my mom back. I knew that without her support, I would not have managed. Laura had always been there for me, always believed in me, and at this difficult moment, she became my rock and support. Ian stood aside, watching the proceedings. He saw me glowing with happiness, surrounded by friends and relatives. He knew he had lost me forever, and that he was the only one to blame. He tried to approach me, but I turned away. I did not want to talk to him, did not want to see him. I wanted to forget everything connected with him and start a new life. Ian sighed and left the room. He knew he did not belong here. He left, leaving me surrounded by loving people in an atmosphere of freedom and hope. The party continued. The guests ate cake, drank champagne, laughed, and joked. But this was no longer the quiet family celebration that had been originally planned. This was a celebration of liberation, a celebration of the beginning of a new life. I stood in the center of the room, surrounded by friends and relatives. I felt happy and free. I knew that many difficulties awaited me, but I was not afraid. I was ready for any trials because I knew that I had the most important thing, the love and support of my son. I looked at Daniel, who was sitting next to me and smiling. I hugged him and held him close. "I love you, my sweet," I whispered. "You are the most precious thing I have." Daniel hugged his mom back. He was happy too. He knew that now they would always be together, that no one could separate them. That evening, I felt that I had turned a page in my life. I had left all the resentment and disappointment in the past and opened a new chapter, full of hope and possibilities. I was ready for a new life, for new adventures, for new happiness. I raised my champagne glass and made a toast to a new life, to freedom, to love. The guests supported my toast with loud applause. Everyone felt that something important had happened that evening, that I had taken a step towards a new, happy life. The evening ended late. The guests left, leaving me and Daniel alone. We sat on the sofa, hugging, and looked out the window at the night city. "Mom," Daniel said quietly, "what happens next?" I smiled. "And next, everything will be fine, my sweet," I replied. "We will live together, we will love each other, and we will be happy." Daniel fell asleep in his mom's arms. I looked at his sleeping face and felt happy. I knew that everything would be fine. I believed in it. I turned off the light and lay down next to my son. I fell asleep, dreaming of a new life, of happiness and freedom. That night, I fell asleep with a smile on my face. I knew that I had passed the point of no return and that a new, happy life awaited me. A life in which I would be the master of my own destiny. A life in which I would love and be loved. A life in which I would be happy.